9 years ago, I met my boyfriend, Adrian. I was in ninth grade, and he was in 11th. He had moved in next door, and because we were too close for buses, but too far to walk, he offered to drive me every day. Even after graduating, he drove me. We got really close, and he became my best friend. We started dating 5 years ago. At that time, I began writing my first story, and Adrian's mom, as an author herself, began helping me. Together we wrote, edited, and got my book ready to publish. Then, in 2019, she passed away unexpectedly. Everyone was distraught, and I decided not to publish the book. Instead, I pushed myself more into work, working 16-hour days. And up until a year ago, I continued to do this. Adrian and I bought a little duplex and moved in together. We rented the other half of it to a friend of his. Now, I've been getting into writing again and have cut back to working 12 hours a day. Over the course of the last decade, I've been buying books. I've spent a good $3,000 on books and have like 175 I've bought myself at this point. I have another 50 that I got from his mom before she passed and also left in the will for me, and then a handful from friends over the years. Last time I went through them, I had 300 books. Now I know this might seem intense, but I have read almost every single one of these. Whenever I get a chance at work, when I have a day off, when I can't sleep, I read. Reading is the way I cope, I guess. Adrian knows how important my books are. He knows how much time, money, and energy I've put into getting them all and keeping them looking good. He himself has read a good bit of them and helps me take care of them. Last week we got into an argument. I don't remember what it was about, just that it lasted from the time I get off until almost noon. So at the least it lasted 7 hours. Most of it was him screaming at me. I don't know if I fell asleep or what, but I genuinely don't remember any of it. However, it did end with him storming out of the house and leaving. I spent the rest of the day in a haze, and immediately I went to the spare room and started reading. It wasn't until he came in an hour before I had to leave for work that I stopped reading. When I got off work the next morning, I immediately went home, took a shower, and fell asleep. I woke up to the fire alarm going off and my husband frantically running around, trying to get them to stop. Immediately, I went into the spare room to see if everything was okay. My books, specifically the shelf that had been gifted to me, were smoking. Some of them were on the floor. I asked him what had happened, and apparently he was playing with this new flame torch lighter when it caught one of my books on fire. It was on the top shelf, so while it wasn't too bad and he was able to get them out, there was a few books, the ones he threw on the floor. I asked him what book caught on fire, and he didn't respond. Instead, he just teared up and pointed. On the ground was the book his mom and I wrote together. I lost it. I asked him to leave, and when he tried to refuse, I threatened to call the police. It took 5 minutes of us arguing before I burst into tears, and he finally left. It's been almost a week now. I haven't responded to him at all. I changed the locks on the house, and even informed his friends that if they let him into my part of the house, I'd have all of them arrested. Last night, his father called me. We talked, and while he said that he understood why I was hurt, he thought I should let Adrian come back and try to fix it. I don't know if I can, though. I don't know if I can trust him. I don't know what to do, and I just need advice. Edit to clear up confusion. No, we are not actually married. I never have and never will want to be married. We agreed we never wanted to get married. However, we are considered to be in a common law marriage because of how long we've been together. The book he burnt wasn't an actual book, not a professional one anyways. It was in a notebook that his mom and I were writing in. When I first wrote it, I wasn't allowed electronics and didn't get my first smartphone until I was 18. So it was just written in a notebook. Thank you all for the advice. I'm calling him, his dad, and my older brother tomorrow to meet for dinner. If it goes well, then it goes well. Hopefully I won't have to do any more updates or edits. Relevant comments. Commenter. How dumb does someone have to be to use a flame torch inside and near obviously flammable books? It seems like it was on purpose. Also, the fact that he was shouting at you in the argument you had wasn't good either. It seems like he burnt your books on purpose. Opie. He constantly is playing with lighters. Usually he is very careful, but I can't see him burning things on purpose. Especially not that book. Commenter. How did he get the flame close enough to a book on the top shelf if his intent wasn't to burn that particular thing? Commenter. He spent 7 hours screaming at you while you disassociated. That's intense. That isn't just genuinely upset. That's entering into complete emotional breakdown territory. He was able to sustain that tired against you for that long, to maintain intensity for that long, and that is a worry. The idea someone that emotionally intense might burn your book is not a big leap. Still, you zoning out like that is a worry. How often is that happening? How often have you had fights that intense? For you to be able to block that much out is a worry in and of itself. You don't need to let him back. If you do meet and discuss, it's in the open on neutral ground. You have strong grounds to consider that fire intentional harm So his presence in your house is a liability until further notice. It's quite clear he needs professional help, but it seems so do you. Opie, I'm on a waiting list to go see a therapist, but the appointment is still about 2 months out. His dad was the one who suggested it to me a few months ago because I do have a tendency to just forget almost all arguments I've had. We don't know why. I think I might have fallen asleep because I don't have any other explanation as to why I don't remember it. And I've had this problem with a lot of arguments ever since I was a teenager. It used to be a lot worse when I lived with my parents, but it got better after I moved out. I'm calling his dad and my older brother tomorrow, and I'm going to have him come with us to dinner before I go to work. I'm hoping that if we can't work it out, then we can at least end it peacefully and don't need to involve anyone else. Opie, how do I get my name off of bills and everything? Hi. I own a duplex with my ex-boyfriend. We live in ID, and I'm currently trying to leave. Everything is in both of our names, and we have separate finances. How do I go about getting my name off of everything so I can leave? I don't know how to do any of this, as while we were both on the titles, he did all of the paying and stuff. I've been doing a lot of research, but from what I've found, most of the advice is to get a lawyer. Do I have to get a lawyer? Commenter. Is your ex willing to work with you? Step 1 is he'd need to refinance the mortgage to just his name. Do not sign the deed over to him until he does this. Opie, I haven't told him about me leaving yet, so I'm not sure yet. Hopefully, he will. Thank you. Update 1. A few months ago, I posted on here about my boyfriend burning a book that was very important to me. Multiple books, actually. A few days after that post, my brother, Isaiah, M29, Adrian, and Adrian's dad all had lunch together a few days later when my brother and I both got time off. I want to say it went well, that we talked and agreed on breaking up and that we went our separate ways. But that would be a lie. We got there and Adrian wasn't there. His father had said that he had been out all night and so he was still asleep, but that he would join us when he woke up. So we waited another half hour before he finally showed up. We ordered and ate in silence until Adrian's dad asked when Adrian was allowed to move back in. Before I could say anything, Isaiah told them that he couldn't until I was moved out. Adrian didn't like this, and it quickly moved into a screaming match. I don't remember much after this. What I do know is that Isaiah and I left not long after, and when we got back home, we started packing my stuff. I have been living with him since. I have taken your guys' advice and tried to report him to the authorities or get a restraining order, but they wouldn't take my report as he had never been physically abusive towards me, and they didn't deem him a threat towards me. We then went and found a lawyer just in case something happens, and because I just know Adrian will start trouble with the house and cars. So I guess we're just preparing for that. Now for the good updates. I got into a doctor who believes I have a dissociate disorder and is sending me to a specialist. However, that is still a few months out. I am also going to be talking to a counselor twice a week starting sometime this month. I haven't gotten a new job in hospice yet, but honestly, I don't think I want to at this moment. For the last month, I've been doing some smaller jobs such as babysitting, tutoring, and dog walking. In the meantime, I have been reading a lot more and have also been getting back into writing. I've actually recently discovered fanfiction and have joined a book group in my area. I'm going to be honest, I'm happier than I have been in a very long time. Since before my dad came back, at least. He did a lot of damage to not only me, but also to Isaiah, and we are both just starting to recover from it. Update 2. So, things have taken a bit of a wild turn. I've been staying with Isaiah for about 2 months now, and for a while, it felt like I was finally getting some clarity in my life. But of course, life doesn't just let you ride the wave forever. It started with Adrian showing up at Isaiah's door one night, completely out of the blue. He was a mess, unshaven, eyes red, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He begged to talk, said he'd been losing his mind without me, that he never meant to hurt me, blah, blah, blah. I was tempted to just slam the door in his face, but Isaiah, being the slightly more level-headed one, told me to hear him out at least outside where there were witnesses. So, we went to this 24-hour diner down the street. I was sitting across from him, and the whole time, I was just trying to keep myself from snapping. He went on and on about how the fire was an accident, how he wasn't in his right mind during that argument, and how much he missed me. And then, he pulled out this small, black notebook, the kind his mom used to write in. He said he found it while cleaning up his mom's old things and thought it might have some of her notes that could help me with my writing. I'll admit, my heart skipped a beat when I saw it, but something felt off, like this was all just a setup. I flipped through the pages, and sure enough, there were some of her notes, phrases, character ideas, a few plot outlines. But what hit me the hardest was a single page near the end, written in her handwriting but clearly torn out of context, for Adrian and my name. Never let anything come between you two. He said he found it a week ago, and it made him realize how much we needed to stick together. It was such a blatant manipulation tactic that I almost laughed. Almost. I gave the notebook back to him and told him I needed time to think. The truth is, I didn't need time. I knew I was done, but I wasn't going to let him know that yet. Isaiah had advised me to keep things calm and under control while we sorted out the legal stuff, so that's exactly what I was doing. After that night, Adrian started texting me constantly, showing up at my work gigs, trying to convince me to come back. I blocked his number, but then he started using different numbers. It was exhausting. One day, while I was out walking this adorable golden retriever named Max, I noticed a car following me. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but then it started showing up at different places outside the library, near Isaiah's place, even at the grocery store. When I finally got a good look, I realized it was Adrian's car. That's when I knew things were escalating. I went to the police again, but just like before, they said there wasn't much they could do since he hadn't made any direct threats or physically harmed me. But they did take my statement, so at least there's a record now. I told my lawyer about it, and she's preparing to push for a restraining order if Adrian keeps this up. She also suggested I start looking into moving to a different city just to be safe. The idea of uprooting my life again is terrifying, but at this point, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get away from him. On a more positive note, the book group I joined has been amazing. They've been incredibly supportive, and I've even started sharing some of my writing with them. It's been cathartic, to say the least. I've also been diving deeper into fanfiction, and it's given me a whole new perspective on writing. It's not something I ever thought I'd do, but it's helping me heal in ways I didn't expect. As for the job situation, I'm still doing small gigs, but I've started taking a few online courses in digital marketing. I figure if I'm going to have to move anyway, it wouldn't hurt to have a job that I can do remotely. But the biggest surprise came just a few days ago. I received a package in the mail, no return address, just my name written in a very familiar handwriting. Inside was a brand new, leather-bound journal. Tucked into the front cover was a note. For the next chapter, wherever it may take you. Hey, I don't know how Adrian found out where I was staying, but it was clearly from him. The gesture was almost sweet if it weren't so creepy. I'm keeping the journal if only as evidence, but I'm definitely not using it. So now, I'm just playing the waiting game. Waiting for the legal stuff to clear up. Waiting for the day I can move on without constantly looking over my shoulder. Waiting for the next chapter. Update 3. Well, I guess I should have known things wouldn't stay calm for long. The situation with Adrian has gone from uncomfortable to downright disturbing, and honestly, I'm not sure how much more of this I can take. It started a week after the journal incident. I came home to Isaiah's place after a long day of running errands, and as soon as I stepped inside, I knew something was off. The lights were on, which was weird because I was pretty sure I turned them off before leaving. Then I noticed the faint smell of Adrian's cologne, something I hadn't smelled in months. My stomach dropped. Isaiah wasn't home, so I walked through the apartment alone, my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing seemed out of place until I got to the living room. There, on the coffee table, was another package, same as before, no return address, but this time it wasn't wrapped. It was just a plain, nondescript box. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct told me to just throw it away, but I had to know what was inside. So I grabbed a kitchen knife, slit the tape, and opened the box. Inside was a single item. The charred remains of the notebook that Adrian's mom and I had written in together. The edges were blackened. Some pages were completely gone, but enough was intact that I could recognize my own handwriting. Scrawled across the front cover, in black marker, were the words, "Remember us." I dropped the box like it was on fire and immediately called Isaiah. He rushed home and, after seeing the box, we both agreed this was the last straw. We called the police, who took the box as evidence, but again, they were frustratingly vague about what they could do. Adrian still hadn't directly threatened me, so they couldn't take immediate action. It felt like I was stuck in a nightmare where no one could or would help me. After the police left, Isaiah and I sat down to figure out our next move. We agreed that I couldn't stay at his place anymore. It was too risky, especially since Adrian clearly knew where I was. We decided I would stay with our cousin, Layla, in a town about 2 hours away while we figured out something more permanent. I packed up what little I had brought to Isaiah's and left that night. Layla was amazing about the whole thing, even though I could tell she was worried. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's not every day your cousin shows up on your doorstep running from a psycho ex who's sending you cryptic, burn-up journals. Things were quiet for the first few days at Layla's place. I started to relax a bit, thinking maybe Adrian had finally given up. But then, just as I was starting to feel a bit of normalcy, it happened again. This time, it was an email. Sent from an untraceable address, of course, but the message was crystal clear. You can't hide forever. I stared at the screen, a mix of anger and fear boiling inside me. Adrian was taunting me, playing some twisted game, and I was the unwilling participant. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and the police, but as usual, there wasn't much they could do. At this point, I was ready to leave the state. maybe even the country if it meant getting away from him. But before I could even start planning my escape, things escalated again. Layla and I were out grocery shopping when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a video message from an unknown number. I hesitated, dreading what I might see, but eventually, I opened it. The video was a shaky, close-up shot of my old duplex. Adrian's voice, low and menacing, narrated as the camera moved through the rooms, focusing on the little things I'd left behind. Picture of me and Isaiah. A few books I hadn't been able to pack, my favorite mug. The video ended with a shot of our bedroom, the bed still unmade from the day I left. His voice whispered, "I'm waiting." That was it. I couldn't stay in Idaho anymore. I called Isaiah, told him what happened, and we agreed it was time for me to really disappear. I needed to go somewhere Adrian couldn't find me, where I could finally start fresh without looking over my shoulder every second. Isaiah and Layla helped me pack up what little I had, and the next morning, I was on a bus heading to the opposite side of the country. I'm not going to say where, just in case, but let's just say it's a place I never thought I'd end up. I've got a new phone, a new job lined up, and I'm staying with an old friend who's been through some rough times herself, so she understands what I'm going through. As for Adrian, I haven't heard from him since I left. I like to think he's finally given up, but deep down, I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. My lawyer's still working on getting the restraining order, and I'm hoping that'll be enough to keep him away if he does find me. Update 4. I never thought I'd be writing another update, but here I am. It's been a few months since I last posted, and things have been, well, let's just say they haven't exactly gone according to plan. So, after I left Idaho, I thought I'd finally escape the chaos that Adrian brought into my life. The first few weeks in my new location were peaceful. I got settled into my friend's place, started my new job, and even managed to get back into writing a bit. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was beginning to feel normal again. But, of course, that didn't last. It started subtly. Little things here and there that I could have easily dismissed as coincidences if I didn't know any better. Like the time I found a book on my friend's bookshelf that I swore I'd left behind in Idaho. Or when I got a letter in the mail addressed to a name I hadn't used since high school, a name Adrian knew. I kept telling myself I was just being paranoid, that it was all in my head, but deep down, I knew better. The breaking point came last week. I was coming home from work, exhausted after a long shift, when I noticed something off about the front door. It wasn't forced open or anything, but it was just slightly ajar. My heart started racing, but I told myself to stay calm. Maybe my friend had just forgotten to close it all the way. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, and immediately, I felt it. That unmistakable feeling of being watched. I glanced around the living room, but everything seemed normal until I noticed the coffee table. Sitting right in the center was the leather-bound journal Adrian had sent me months ago, the one I'd handed over to the police. I froze, a cold chill running down my spine. There was no way it could have ended up here. No freaking way. I wanted to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. I forced myself to move forward, reaching out to pick up the journal. As I did, a small piece of paper slipped out from between the pages and fluttered to the floor. I hesitated, then bent down to pick it up. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in Adrian's unmistakable handwriting. "We're not done yet." I dropped the paper and stumbled back, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how he had found me, how he had gotten into the house. I hadn't told anyone where I was, hadn't left any clues behind, yet somehow, he had tracked me down. I didn't know what to do. My friend was out of town, and I was too scared to stay in the house alone. So I grabbed my keys and bolted. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours, my thoughts spinning out of control. It wasn't until I found myself parked in a quiet, deserted lot that I finally stopped and broke down. I called Isaiah, sobbing as I told him everything that had happened. He tried to calm me down, told me to get to a safe place, that he'd handle things from his end, but I could hear the worry in his voice. I knew he was just as scared as I was. I ended up checking into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, using cash to avoid leaving a trail. I didn't sleep that night, too afraid that Adrian might somehow find me again. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer and the police, but once again, there was little they could do. They advised me to move again, to a different state this time, but I was starting to wonder if running would ever be enough. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I got a call from Adrian's dad. He told me that Adrian had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital after a breakdown, and that he had been diagnosed with a severe mental illness. According to his dad, Adrian had become obsessed with the idea that I was the key to his recovery and that he needed to find me to make things right. His dad begged me to come back, to talk to Adrian, to help him get better. I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt a pang of guilt, like maybe I could have done something differently. Maybe I could have prevented all of this. But another part of me knew that going back would be a huge mistake. I wasn't responsible for Adrian's actions, and I couldn't put myself in danger just to save him from himself. So I told his dad no. I told him that I couldn't do it, that I needed to keep myself safe. He didn't take it well, called me selfish, said I was abandoning Adrian when he needed me the most. But I held my ground, even though it broke my heart to hear the pain in his voice. Now, I'm in the process of moving again, this time to a completely different part of the country. I've changed my name, my appearance, everything I can think of to make it harder for Adrian to find me. I've cut ties with almost everyone from my old life, including some of my closest friends, just to make sure I'm not leaving any loose ends. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe this will be the last time I have to run. Maybe Adrian will finally get the help he needs and leave me alone. Or maybe this is just the beginning of a new nightmare. All I know is that I can't keep living like this. I've lost so much already: my home, my sense of security, even my identity. But I refuse to lose myself. I'm going to keep fighting, keep surviving, no matter what it takes. And if Adrian does find me again, well, I'll be ready.